If you feel like you're doing this alone, like fatherhood is harder than it should be, you're not imagining it. You are more isolated than any man of any generation before you. For 10,000 years of human civilization, men raised families surrounded by community, networks of men that they knew and could trust. Then, in just the last few generations, all of that disappeared. And today, most of us are left trying to figure out fatherhood all on our own, with no mentors, no real support system, and no roadmap for how to do it right. I've spent years studying this shift and living it, and I've come to realize how reimagining how we understand history and reevaluating how we structure our families today totally changes how you approach marriage and family life. So in this video, we're going to break it all down. How we got here, why fatherhood seems like such a struggle, and what we can do to rebuild the networks that men have used to build thriving families and communities for thousands of years. Let's get into it. There's 200,000 years of human history. We have 10,000 years of things essentially being the same. Leading up to the Industrial Revolution in 1850, for 10,000 years, all human beings everywhere essentially had the same lifestyle. Fundamentally, 10,000 years ago, humanity figured out agriculture, which meant we could build communities, we could build societies, we could have stability year over year, generation after generation in a particular spot, working with the rhythms of the environment. We were able to provide food year round. We were able to store food through the winter. We were able to grow crops in the growing season. Everywhere around the world, human beings for 10,000 years lived in little hamlets, 100 or 200 people, living in an agricultural environment where people generally didn't stray far from their place of birth for their entire life. All of us were born into a very short-term experiment that began 175 years ago, 1850, the Industrial Revolution. But then we went through, at the turn of the 20th century, and then after World War II, we went through two double downs. So we put our foot further on the accelerator of this contrast between living in an agricultural environment with extended family who also never really leave, and unrelated community members who also don't really leave. So there's a handful of families living in a few miles of each other and have very enmeshed, interwoven lives, generation after generation. Fast forward through those rapid transitions over the past 175 years, and instead we have huge numbers of people, instead of small little hamlets and villages, we have huge numbers of people urbanizing, coming from all over the globe to these large industrial and commercial centers on top of each other where everyone around them is a stranger. But what does that mean for marriages and family life on that second row? It means that for 10,000 years, if you were a father, you had, within arm's reach, within the sound of your voice, you had a dozen or more trusted peers and mentors, from cousins, older brothers, aunts and uncles, grandparents, in-laws. You had this network of men who are similarly situated, have same foundational beliefs and values, have the same basic worldview, and are undeniably, subconsciously, and inextricably invested in your well-being and the well-being of your family. So as a father and husband for 10,000 years, you couldn't help but draw upon the support of that network of men. Whereas when we have a world that we live in today of transience and individualism, which we'll get to in a different discussion, the concept of individualism as a modern innovation. But the result now is, as a husband and father, you're more likely than ever to be geographically isolated. As soon as you've reached young adulthood, you will leave your hometown, either for work or for college or for trade school, or you will go somewhere, usually because you're pursuing employment. And if not employment directly, it's because you're pursuing education so you can pursue employment. But what that means is, as soon as you reach adulthood, you cease having a network, whatever that network might have been in your hometown, whoever you grew up with, whatever relatives you might have grown up around, you will separate yourself from them. And then you will establish a marriage and a family geographically isolated from any support. Now, the consequences, as we're going to get into, both conceptually and in terms of the data, are are foreseeable, or at least they're logical. Maybe it's not fair to say that people should have seen that coming, but it's definitely something you can see in retrospect. Hindsight is 2020. And it's very obvious that when you have a family, a couple and children who are surrounded by extended family and surrounded by community members with whom they have spent their entire life and with whom they plan to spend their entire life, the outcomes are much better. All other things being equal, those outcomes are much better than if you take a person out of their support network, their hometown, their family and community, they marry someone else who's also taken out of their hometown, family and community, and they try to raise children and keep a marriage together while both working in isolation without any support that they don't have to pay for. We are struggling because of our geographic disconnection from our families of origin, extended family networks, lifelong friends, familiar hometown communities. That doesn't obviously tell us what the solution is, but we need to first understand the problem and then we'll get to the solution. So here's the real challenge. If men today are more isolated than ever, if we don't have the support systems and networks that had endured for 10,000 years, what can we possibly do to move forward? How do we rebuild order, authority, structure, and community in our families and beyond when we're starting from scratch? How do we lead in our homes and in our communities when modern society has stripped us of the very tools that made it possible? That's exactly what we'll cover in the next video. Click the link on your screen or use the pinned comment below. Over there, we'll discuss how to lead your family like a team, restore order, and overcome the chaos that's been established by modern society. Knowing what is causing the dysfunction isn't enough. You need to have the tools to fix it.